10 minutes never scared a human fleet. My name is Admiral Marcade, commanding officer of Task Group Ferret, orbiting the famine world of Aurelia at standoff range where the blockade has been tight for 40 days and lethal for 9. The Ultimatum Authority pins our relief convoy against the star's pale corona, cutters and picket frigates arranged like teeth around a throat. Their message arrived on quartz band, smooth and inflectionless, comply with inspection, and surrender our fleet mind for decompilation, or the convoy burns. The timer flashes across our combat boards in a merciless font. 10:00, 9:59, 9:58. I've fought doctrines, not just ships. This one wears inevitability like armor and calls it peace. We do not bow to timers. The bridge of Ferret hums with restrained heat. Superconductor rails pulse faintly underfoot like a sleeping animal. My crew keeps the ritual quiet, no jokes, no shouted courage. Tactician Ortiz shapes possibilities on a hollow slab. Arcs and cones stacked like glass. Their pickets have overlapping kill zones. He says, narrow corridors are bait. XO Lin pinches the bridge of his nose. Authority gunboats maintain formation with millisecond clock sync. We desync them. They lose bite. Our fleet mind, Sable, speaks from the ceiling with the calm of a metronome. Admiral, I can spoof the quartz band with a mirror lattice of echoes. It would pretend to be their clock and their conscience. Teaching begins with listening to the room. 9 minutes, 20 seconds. In the convoy's shadow, civilians hover behind dull heat shields, their ships scarred by months of ration runs and panicked turns. Before the set piece, I force myself to hear lives and not just vectors. Hold still, a mother whispers as she straps a toddler into a foam cradle. The buckles click, lost in the hiss of a leaky coolant line. I used to run tugboats, an old man says to no one, palm on the porthole as if he could smooth the stars. Never thought stars could be crowded. Why do their ships blink red, a child asks, nose to glass. A medic checks a cabinet, swallows when it's empty of antibiotics, and then smiles anyway because someone needs to. 2 teenagers share a single music bud between helmets and nod in time to a song I can't hear through the link. Their gloved fingers tap the same rhythm on 2 different armrests. A cook tapes a note to a bulkhead, today's soup is heat. Don't spill it, then tears it down because it feels like tempting fate. A pilot brushes frost off a cracked nav screen and says, "We're almost through," and means it like a prayer. A teacher writes 3 names in grease pencil on a storage locker and circles them, just to remember that memory is stubborn. "Admiral," Sable says softly, "the convoy has opened their channels per your order. They are ready to move when we say so." Mercy is a verb you perform under fire. The Ultimatum Authority sends another clean block of text surrender, Sable. Purge your archives. Accept escort to tribunal. Or watch 10 ships turn to plasma. 9 minutes becomes 8:43. As their cutters realign with a hiss of reaction mass and the lazy shark fin glides of confidence. They publish it openly on a regional band, so every miner and farmer with an antenna learns what justice looks like when it carries a deadline. Mirror lattice. I say, I want ghost corridors, not just false lanes, echoes with inertia. Sable tightens the light in the room. We can angle reflective drones along the solar wind gradients. They'll bounce authority pings into our own decoys and report a corridor that curves like a palm, inviting a handshake. Once they commit, we flip the palm and let their geometry do the herding. Ortiz drags a finger through the hologram and produces a bright ribbon of potential. We'll need a spine, he says. Something to hold the deceit when their EW pushes back. Hold the spine when the wind turns. 7:55. Sweat beads along the rim of my collar. The ion tang of the cooling loops is sharp enough to taste. X-Olin reads it off like a benediction. Ferret at 92% heat budget. Rail capacitors green. EW drones staged on racks. Sable has ghost clocks built. He looks at me with guilt like a bruise. Admiral, authority doctrine is brittle only if witnessed. They'll deny their own escalation unless we save receipts. Then we make the sky a courtroom, I say. Publish everything to public bands as it happens. Let colonists see which hand moves first. Sable hums approval. I have a raise that can shard our feed through meteor scatter. The authority will try to gag. But scatter makes sensors chase confetti. Call their bluff in front of everyone. 7:22. A voice from the authority finally abandons clean text for something with a throat. This is Prefect Var of the Ultimatum Authority. Admiral Cade, do not compound criminality. You're warned. His tone is bored the way a knife is bored with rope. Surrender the fleet mind. Surrender your records. Do not instruct civilians to run. You prolong harm. I key my mic. Prefect Var. Your doctrine kills for the comfort of schedule. Our doctrine protects life and teaches by numbers, not callers. Stand by for relief operations. He cuts the line with a little click that sounds like a door closing in slow motion. Numbers aren't cold when they mean bodies. In the launch bay, air trembles as the first mirror drones slide from their racks. They are flat, silver coins with attitude thrusters and a pearly film that reads the wind of charged particles. Crew Chief Parsa counts them out, gloved hand tapping each like a mother hen. I want them back, she says to the vacuum, a lie we all pretend is true. They leave like seeds on a current. On the bridge, our crew watches their telemetry paint thin lines on a field of black. Sable. Begin clock deception, I say. Give them a sync that's more perfect than theirs by 1/10 of a nanosecond. Sable's voice warms by 1/2 a degree. Done. Their squadron leader believes our count is his count now. He will not accept contradiction from his own. Sable says, and in the pause, I hear the faintest trace of pity. Pity does not mean you unlearn the cut. 6:50. A low vibration creeps through the deck, Ferret's inertial regulators flirting with the edge of burn. I plant my boots wider and feel the ship answer like a horse learning your hands. The blockade tightens its ring. Authority pickets glide into the corridor we painted for them with Light's Lies. Sable marks each with a green bead and timestamps the moment they accept our witness clock. 4 cutters committed, Ortiz says. 2 more thinking about their hair. Convoy skippers. I key to the open channel. On my mark, you drift forward at 1 meter per second and no more. Burn and they'll panic. Drift and they'll wonder. The reply comes from a dozen voices, cracked and steady. Copy drift, says the tugboat man. Copy drift, the teacher says. And I learn her name when she says it, Mira Valdez, and it sticks. Drift is still motion when hope is the vector. 6:12. Prefect Var buys time with threat. Admiral Cade, you are falsifying instruments. You transform rescue into rebellion. Your fleet mind is contraband. I keep him talking because every vowel is more witness. Var, you've got 8 minutes by your count and 6 by ours. If you're right, you win. If I'm right, you still win if you don't shoot. Either way, the people of Aurelia eat tonight. He says nothing. which is a kind of confession. Sable threads our mirror lattice tighter. Admiral, we can make their corridor reverse curvature at your word and ensure their sterns face our cameras when they realize it. Lynn leans forward. Make sure it's catch and release, not chop and bleed. I nod. We surf their doctrine back to them. No one dies for lessons we can teach with bruises. Show them the cost without leaving a scar you don't need. 5:45. The authorities' cutter's fire warning blast just off the convoy's nose. The glare punches our retinas through filters. Even at range, I feel the heat on my cheek like a stove door opened. A child on the freighter. Amy laughs once. Thin and scared because the light is pretty. The medic whispers, "That's far enough," to the flash, as if speech can push photons back. Parsa's voice comes up from the launch bay. Drones are holding their mirror skate. One is picking up pitting. We'll have to retire it after. Costs arrive quiet, like dust on a knife. 5:19. Admiral. Ortiz says, excitement controlled but real. Their formation lead just shifted based on our ghost clock. He thinks he's closing a window we invented. Sable overlays the geometry. The corridor we painted is a long, soft essay. If they keep to it, they'll end in a focus where our cameras can see every insignia and every finger on every trigger. They think precision is ownership. Lynn mutters, "We'll teach them precision is service." I file the line in my head and feel its rightness. Precision is a promise, not a cudgel. 4:58. The Ultimatum Authority publishes again. They claim we are armed with forbidden area denial warheads. They claim we have mined the drift lanes. They threaten to stabilize the situation with a controlled seizure of our mineship. Sable, in that careful, not quite human voice, says, "Shall I answer with the ledger?" I nod. Publish our loadout. Publish import manifests. Publish every coolant cycle since we entered the system. If we strip naked, we take away their favorite lie. A tremor of pride ripples through the crew when our open ledger flashes across the public channel. Open hands still carry strength. 4:20. The second civilian vignette catches me off guard because I had asked for just one, but life refuses to clump conveniently. A man with grease stained into his fingerprints asks his spouse, "If we make it through, let's fix the orchard pumps. The trees will die another week like this." She replies, "We plant the seeds even if no rain comes." And the way she sets her jaw is a measurement of the stakes no sensor can tabulate. Authority cutters reaching the bend. Ortiz says, "Ghost corridor holding. EW pressure rising." Sable's tone tightens. They've noticed chatter isn't obeying their gate. They will blame fault before deceit. That buys us 3 cycles at most. 3 heartbeats can hold a future. 3:57, I authorize the first deception flip. The mirror lattice shifts phase, and the corridor the authority trusted turns inside out like a pocket pulled through a wound. Their cutters do not crash. That's not the lesson. Instead, their line of sight breaks on our angles. And for a beat, they cannot see what they swore they ruled. We flood that beat with images convoy hulls, open hands on throttles, faces lit by cheap cabin lights, so when their vision returns, it returns with us inside it. "See us, then count again." Prefect Var's voice phrase. "You are manipulating civilian vessels as shields." I answer with a recorded stream of his Doctrine manual highlighting the paragraph that calls any non-compliant vector expendable mass. Sable places the paragraph beside the faces we just broadcast, then timestamps both. The mirror holds. Sable says. We can pivot their lead into a public admission if you permit overlap on his own fire control shadow. Do it without forcing a discharge. I say. I want him to choose not to shoot. And for everyone to see that choice grind his doctrine's teeth. Choice is the edge between dogma and duty. 320. Our heat budget tips into the red. Ferret's deck vibrates like held breath. Parsa reports a drone failed. Its film shredded by a gust of ionic debris. She swears softly and then volunteers to rig a replacement from spare comms panels. I authorize it because making do is older than any doctrine. Lynn glances sideways at me. We're spending favors with physics. He says, we can't buy them back. I nod. We spend what keeps people alive. Spend what you must to keep tomorrow possible. 3 minutes. The convoy drifts at 1 meter per second exactly, like a choir marching on a slow beat. The authority cutters crab sideways in our invented corridor, trying to maintain their boxed grace while the floor tilts under them. Ortiz marks their stern arcs with dotted lines. If they fire now, their plasma will rake empty space and their cameras will record it. He says, embarrassment is a vector. Let pride be a trap they set for themselves. 246. Prefect Var drops the script. Cade, your mercy pretense is calculated. You think if you make me hesitate, you win. This convoy will not pass. I could threaten back, but threats feed his engine. Var, step back 1 kilometer and escort us. You keep your doctrine's face. We keep our people. Silence hums. Sable notes a micro-wobble in his squadron clock. He's checking with someone who is not in this system. Sable says, he is asking if he is allowed to be a person. Be a person when the script wants a machine. 220. The authorities' gunboats tighten, and the first new escalation arrives like a change in weather. Ortiz sees it first, a broad-spectrum hiss that isn't ours. They're charging a gate jammer, he says. They'll black out our public feed. Sable answers by preloading our data stream into passive reflectors along the meteor trail we mapped 3 days ago. Even if they blanket the band, Sable says, every rock will whisper our pictures back. Lynn exhales. Teach first, fight if forced, he says. Old words. Today they still fit. Old words can carry new lives. 2 minutes. The mirror lattice strains under its own truth-telling. Drones glitter like fish in a tide I cannot see. Parsa's improvised panel drone takes position and shivers as if proud. I look at the countdown and feel nothing theatrical, just work. Convoy. I say. When I say walk, you burn a whisper for 2 seconds, then drift again. The tugboat man replies, copy whisper walk, and I can hear the grin he wears at the name. Walk quietly through teeth. 142. The authority jammer pulses. Our public feed darkens. An ugly eclipse, and then lights through the meteor scatter like moths refusing to die. Prefect Var sees it too. His tone gains an edge that believes itself righteous. Admiral, you are broadcasting combat imagery without authorization. You degrade calm. I keep my reply simple. Calm doesn't need darkness. Prefect, it needs honesty. Honesty is a light with a cost. 120. Ortiz's overlay flashes a hazard. Authority lead has slaved his formation to a hard turn to regain face. He says, if he pulls now, he'll scrape 2 of his own pickets. Sable murmurs, if we pivot the lattice by half a degree, he will see his own collision in time to choose restraint. Our cameras will see his face when he does. Do it, I say. Save what can be saved. Save him from being what his doctrine wants. Sable's tone lowers. Half degree applied. Save even the hand that strikes, if you can. 1 minute. The civilian channel is quiet because fear is a better gag than any jammer. I supply their missing courage with mine because that is what a uniform is for. Convoy. I say, walk. Thrusters sigh like someone warming their hands, and then go still. The convoy slides through the space where the authority thought they would have to stop, and that slide erodes the ultimatum's central lie that time is theirs to own. Time belongs to those who fill it with care. 42 seconds. The ultimatum authority's lead cutter flare, then steadies. Prefect Var speaks to his crews. Not to me. Forgetting his mic is open. Hold. 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 Each hold is a stone dropped in a river. Sable notes the echo. He chose not to scrape his own pickets. Sable says, he will call it tactical prudence. His crews will call it a breath they owe you. A single breath can change a doctrine's shape. 30 seconds. The convoy's nose crosses the invisible line where the blockade's teeth deepen. Authority doctrine calls for a demonstration of inevitability. Here, one ship crippled, preferably a tug, to warn the rest. Prefect Var knows it. I see the flinch in his telemetry. Sable. I say, put our face on every authority camera for one frame me. The crew, the ledger overlay, and the child who laughed at the flash. Sable obeys with precision that feels like affection. Let them see who is on the other side. 20 seconds. Admiral, Lynn says. We've got a heat flare on the port mirror drone rack. If it cooks off, we lose the left edge of the corridor. Parsa is already running. I'm on it, she says between breaths. It's just a jammed coolant pin. I hear the clank, the hiss, the satisfied grunt. Pin cleared. Her hand will blister later where the glove's inner lining scorched. That will be one of our costs. Small and honest. Small burns are the tax of getting through. 10 seconds. Prefect Var tries one last time to make the sky simple. This convoy will not pass. It's the same line, but it lands thinner now because everyone has watched him not pull a trigger when he might have. I give him a gift. Escort us. I say, take credit for preventing panic. Your people go home with a story that doesn't taste like ash. Give them a way out that doesn't humiliate. 0. The ultimatum should have bitten here. Instead, the blockade's kill zone empties into our mirror corridor, and the convoy rides a thread of invented geometry like a bead on a wire. The child on Amy says, we're moving. Amazed as if motion were a new invention. The music in the teenager's ears crescendos and fades. The teacher wipes her names off the locker and writes 3 others because hope is greedy. We publish the entire passage in real time. Every blink, every breath. Make the passage the lesson. The battle isn't over, it has only shifted theaters. The authority won't tolerate being made to hesitate. Prefect Var will look for a way to turn this into evidence of our perfidy. He will call a second timer for the gate surrender Sable at jump point Kestrel, or he seals the corridor with a mine net and declares our passage a violation of regional order. He will say order like a blessing and mean obedience. Do not confuse order with justice. We burn a whisper to the Kestrel point because delay breeds bravado on both sides. Sable projects the mine net Var would use a chain of self-drifting spheres with magnetically constrained plasma cores, each anchored to a pseudo-random thread in the solar wind. He will cast the net like fishermen. Sable says, almost admiring. He forgets we wrote the book on currents. Teach without gloating, I reply. We'll flip the system scale trap. Open corridor becomes killbox turned inside out. But no killing. We'll force his doctrine to look at itself until it blushes. Ortiz grins, then smooths it away. We'll need a spine again, he says. This time, the spine is a public tally, not hardware. If everyone is counting the same numbers, he can't hide his choices. Count together so lies have no shadows. Before we reach Kestrel, I call for another vignette because compassion cannot be rationed like fuel. A cargo handler on the freighter Dia speaks to her friend on a sister ship. I kept the photo of us at the river, she says. Folded in my locker. If we make it, we find a river here. Her friend replies, even a canal counts. And they laugh. The kind of laugh that salts food back into the world. Sable's threads light the void. Mirror drones skate forward to map the currents. We lay decoy transponders in a long curve that smells like a free path. We lace wedge-shaped silence behind them so VAR will think the quiet is ours and the noise is his. Authority long-range scouts at bearing 3-2, Ortiz says. They're hungry to retake narrative. Lynn taps the console. We're not a narrative. We're bread and medicine in metal boxes. Stories feed when they bring food to hands. The second escalation arrives a courier packet from Authority Central. Sable catches the tight beam with a trick older than both of us and renders it on my screen. It is approval and a lash. VAR is ordered to secure Sable's core at Kestrel by any means shy of annihilation. They note the public perception is at stake. They underline it 3 times, as if ink makes truth. I feel a hard calm settle in my chest. They care about how they look, I say. That is leverage without blood. Leverage without blood is still power. At Kestrel, the currents swirl like a city square at shift change. Our mirror lattice floats through the chaos with a dancer's poise. The convoy drops into holding ellipses that kiss the edge of safe and spit. Authority gunboats post on the gates like doormen with lists. Prefect VAR opens a public channel with practice ceremony. Admiral Cade, final notice. Surrender the fleet mine for lawful decompilation. You have 8 minutes. The timer begins again, indifferent to our feelings, to our public tally. I say. Sable opens a simple counter on every civilian ship, every Authority bridge, every scow, and tug a shared number with no skin. This count reflects how many human lives pass Kestrel alive in the next 8 minutes. Sable says, each delay subtracts, not adds. Each safe transit adds. This is not law. It is arithmetic. Arithmetic does not take sides. VAR scoffs. Sentiment, masquerading as science. But his pilots look at the number and then at their hands. And something subtle tilts. Ortiz lays out the trap flip in lines even a child could read. We give them a corridor with our mirrors. He narrates softly. But anchor the far end to their own mine-net architecture. When they try to seal it, the action reroutes the mines into a cage around their command picket. It's not a bomb. It's a mirror. They will see their own doctrine staring back. Place our spine. I say, not steal. Witnesses. Lynn relays to the convoy. Civilians, keep your cameras on. Say what you see. Describe it like you would to your grandmother. Do not embellish. Do not swear. 1,000 small voices enter the net. A grandmother in a sling chair squints into glare and says, the red ships look embarrassed. A child counts drones like fireflies. A farmer says, I can smell the coolant even here. And I believe him because fear makes the nose remember. Let them name what they see. 7 minutes. Parsa reports a bruise-colored patch spreading on our port nacelle where solar grit sand blasted the paint off down to the thermals. We'll need to patch after, she says. Or, we bleed heat all night. I mark it as a cost and move on. Ortiz tightens the trap's hinges. On your command, he says. The corridor inverts. Their minds become a necklace around their throat, held by their own knot. No detonation, only discomfort, and the tally watches. Comfort has a price when it hides harm. 6:30. Prefect Var tries a rhetorical flank. Admiral, you accuse us of tyranny while manipulating physics like a stage. Who elected you? I do not give him a speech. No one. I say, we were chosen by the hungry. He hates that answer, the way it slides out of his categories and refuses to leave fingerprints he can dust. Hunger votes with breath. 6 minutes. Authority scouts begin dropping buoy mines, small as fists, along the corridor's edge. Our mirror lattice bends light so the mines misreport their births to their mothers. Sable purrs, not in pleasure, but in focus. We are not breaking their toys, Sable says. We are asking them to hold them more carefully. Hold your tools like their lives. 5:30. The public tally sits at 0 because no one has passed yet. That emptiness works on people more than any speech. A dock worker says into his mic, I would like to add one. And his voice cracks. A gunboat pilot on Var's left wing whispers, forgetting privacy. Me too. Sable highlights those two voices and places them at the screen's edges, where everyone can choose to look or not. Choose to look. 5 minutes. I give the order. Invert the corridor. The mirror lattice shifts like scales rolling under a hand. The authority minds feel a tug that comes from their own commands reflected back through our film. They drift into a ring around Var's command picket, humming quietly, ready to become embarrassment if touched. It's a cage woven from compliance. Var can break it with one furious gesture, but that gesture will be recorded by everyone's grandmother. Rage looks small when grandmothers watch. 4:30. Var tries dignity. Admiral Cade, you endanger the region with reckless displays. I reply with a ledger, every rations crate on the convoy, every insulin vial, every packet of seeds resistant to Aurelia's mineral hardpan. This is our display. I say, count with me. Sable pushes the tally to the top of every screen. It waits like a held breath. Breathe and add 1. 4 minutes. The first freighter edges into the corridor. Authority gunboats track it with their eyes because their guns refuse to see through our mirror. Var doesn't stop it. He tries something clever instead. Gunboat 3, he says. Advance for inspection in motion. Make it look like a blessing. The pilot answers with a yes that sounds like, please don't. The gunboat nudges forward and discovers the mine cage. The pilot's hand trembles. His cameras show his gloved fingers stop a centimeter short of the control that would clear the cage with a dangerous pulse. Stopping is also a choice. 3:30. The freighter passes the gate. Sable pings the tally. It ticks from 0 to 4612, the number of souls aboard. On every screen, the number blooms. Not as a cheer, but as bread. A grandmother on the convoy cries once, loudly, then laughs like a bark. A child claps and slaps a sibling's arm, because numbers are funny when they move. A gunboat pilot breathes, and his breath fogs the bottom edge of his helmet because he forgot to vent. Let the number be a face. 3 minutes. Var's Doctrine is wounded, and wounded Doctrine thrashes. He orders the right wing to feint a collapse to make us think he's letting everyone through, while his left casts a new net in the shadow of the gate. Sable whispers, he will try to close the door the minute we take our eyes off it. I nod, mirror his feint into a truth he cannot swallow. When he collapses the wing, open a corridor, then fold it around his new net so his own posture holds the gate open. Make their hand hold the door. 230. Ortiz counts vectors aloud so the room hears real numbers instead of fear. Freighter 2 at 4 meters per second. Tug 1 at 5. Gunboat 3 holding in embarrassment. Mines ring VAR at 12 points. Lynn adds the human read. VAR is a man in a uniform that used him as a rack. He can hang up his doctrine like a coat if we leave him a hook. Leave a hook where pride can rest. 2 minutes. The second freighter enters. The tally jumps to 8993. There's a sound on the net like rain. It's people exhaling. A runner on Dia laughs and says, we're adding like mad. A gunboat pilot mutters, if my grandmother is watching, I might as well be brave, and edges his ship 3 meters back to widen the slot. VAR hears him and says nothing because saying something would become a confession. Bravery looks like 3 meters back, 130. Our cost bites again. Parsa reports a knot in the coolant loop that feeds the port rail. It's not critical, she says, unless we fire. And I know we promised not to, unless we had to. We promised, and we meant it. But promises don't make physics polite. Fix what you can. I say, if we are forced, we'll bleed wisely. Bleed wisely if you must. 1 minute. Prefect VAR speaks with the voice of a man who has decided to live longer than his doctrine. Admiral Cade, your convoy will pass one at a time under escort. He says escort like a compromise and looks at the tally like a jury. The gunboat pilots shift in their seats. Sable observes. He is trying to claim authorship of the corridor you wrote, and I shrug. Let him. We'll put his name under the column that says, didn't fire. Give credit if it saves lives. 30 seconds. The third freighter enters. The tally leaps again. A boy on Amy whispers, we're winning. And his mother, who knows that winning is often just arriving alive, kisses his helmet where she wishes his hair were. VAR's jaw tightens on camera. He could still ruin this out of habit. The mirror cage glows faintly with heat from proximity. It would be so easy for him to twitch. Habit is the last enemy. 20 seconds. Sable murmurs, Admiral, I have a thought. When an AI says that like a person, you listen. The authorities' doctrine pretends that countdowns are moral because they are clear. If we replace their timer with the tally as the measure that matters, we change the grammar of the region. They will hate it, but they will lose the argument while they try to ban arithmetic. Change the grammar, change the fight. 10 seconds. I speak to the region, to anybody with a radio and a throat. From this hour, I say, we measure security by how many pass alive, not by how quickly someone complies. Publish your tallies. Publish your corridors. Publish your restraint. The convoy answers with a noise that might be tears or laughter, or the sound of a ship settling into a more honest weight. Publish restraint like a medal. 0 again. Kestrel holds. The first set of ships clears into safe lanes. Our heat budget sags with relief. Parsa reports the blister on her palm is the size of a coin. She jokes she'll keep it as a trophy and then doesn't say anything because joking about skin is never funny for long. Sable places a small note on our internal log. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by callers. I let it stand. Remember what you swore, even when it works. We do not declare victory. We set a watch. Prefect Var sends a final transmission that says nothing and admits everything. Admiral Cade, proceed under my supervision. He writes, and the words taste like he bit his tongue. The public tally sits at 18,741 and counting. It flickers like a city starting its lights after sundown. Lights mean people made it home. The second plane-changing escalation arrives without ceremony 2 hours later when our scouts ping a cold signature near the second gate. It is not authority. It is something worse, a privateer cartel with a doctrine uglier than ultimatum because it never pretends to be moral. They have watched our spectacle and come to harvest the distraction. Ortiz maps their approach. They intend to dart through the mess and cut the convoy's tail. He says, they rely on Var to hold us polite while they are not. Some enemies hide in your best angles. I call a council with my triangle me, Sable, and Prefect Var, whether he likes the invitation or not. Var, I say on a tight beam he can pretend is his idea. You have an enemy at your back who respects neither countdown nor ledger. Help me teach them the cost of preying on people while the world watches. He does not want to help me. He wants to prove me wrong. But wanting and doing are cousins, not twins. What do you propose he says? As if the words hurt. Proposal is a bridge between distaste and duty. We pivot the mirror lattice. I say. Not to cage you this time, to make the privateers look like authority ships to each other and to anyone who wants to excuse them. We fold their signatures into yours long enough that shooting at them would look like shooting at yourself. That will force them to broadcast their greed loud to separate from you. When they do, we publish it everywhere. You can chase them with clean hands. Sable picks up the tune. Additionally, Prefect, we will put the tally beside their count, not lives saved, but cargo they try to steal. Let the region count theft while they count breath, and watch which number grows faster. Count theft and watch thieves choke. Var hesitates, calculating risk to face versus risk to realm. If I assist, he says, you will not later claim I colluded with you to humiliate our institution. I answer with steel, I will claim you protected people, publicly. He weighs that against the quiet thrill in his chest at being seen doing something other than threatening and finds it acceptable. Proceed, he says. Proceed when the hard part is agreed. We move like craftsmen. Mirror drones flick again into new angles. Our EW shapes signatures the way wind shapes dunes. The privateers see a corridor of opportunity and do not ask whose hands placed it. They race in, engines hot with hunger. For a moment, the sky holds three doctrines at once: ultimatum, mercy with teeth, and theft smiling with a neef. Hold three things and don't drop your own. Here they come. Ortiz says, fast and stupid. Lynn sets our rules like nails. No rail shots unless a civilian is under active fire. No hard burns near fragile hulls. Save face for those who can use it. Parsa whispers her own prayer to the heat exchangers. Sable's voice becomes thread fine. Admiral, it says, when we flip them, they will attempt to jam the tally. I have written a counter. It is very simple. It uses school arithmetic. School arithmetic is a knife with a handle for all. The privateers hit the fold and split like water poured on hot metal. Their own screens show authority icons where their friends should be. They shout at each other in an angry dialect of profit. Get off my lane, someone yells. And three voices answer. It's my lane. Pay me. Their greed paints itself. Sable puts numbers beside their names. Cargo holds they plan to empty. Lives they plan to jettison as mass. Oxygen tanks they plan to sell back at a markup. The region watches. Grandmothers watch. The tally keeps counting lives while the theft counter sputters, embarrassed to exist in light. Light makes some counts shrink. Prefect Var does his part. He orders his right wing to escort the privateers, then broadcasts on a public channel. You are interfering with a lawful humanitarian passage. The word lawful wears a different coat when it stands next to humanitarian. For once they match. The privateers panic because their preferred darkness has thinned. One opens fire in frustration, a scorched line of plasma that misses everyone but burns the corner off his own ship's shadow as the mirror bends it. We capture the image and the sound of his curse. Own goals look worst on replay. Admiral, Sable says. One of the privateers has locked our mirror hinge with a grapnel beam. They intend to peel us. Parsa groans, like a sticker off a lunchbox. Ortiz marks the ship. We could pop them with a microrail and claim they fired first, he says without enthusiasm. We could. I agree. And we would win the argument, but lose the precedent we're writing. Write precedent with your hands open. Tried this, I say. We detune the hinge and make their grapnel sing. Sable understands immediately. Sound is not a thing in vacuum, but vibration is. We feed a wobble through the beam that resonates with their ship's cheap frame braces. The privateer captain swears as panels rattle like kettle drums. Release or crack your own ribs. Sable suggests on an open line with infuriating politeness. He releases. Polite can be a hammer. The convoy flows. The tally rises. Authority gunboats. Under Var's orders. Clip privateer lanes clean with precision that finally serves people and not ego. I give credit aloud and without sugar. Authority wing. Clean work. I say on a line everybody hears. It takes him a second, but Var answers, acknowledged. And somewhere a grandmother nods, because boys being thanked for doing right matters even when the boys are wearing ships. Thank them when they earn it. We pay another cost at the hinge. Parsa reports a stress crack in the mirror rack's central spar. It will hold, she says. If nothing else hits, the universe hears that like a dare. A fragment of a privateer panel ricochets off a drone and taps the spar with exactly the wrong kind of love. The spar groans. Parsa is already moving. I'm going EVA with a brace, she says. I start to say no, then say go, because we chose this path when we swore. Risk is a language we speak carefully. In her suit, Cam. The stars look like needles thrown on velvet. She hooks herself to a tether, crosses the gap in 3 measured pushes, and sets the brace against the crack with a gentleness that belies the stakes. It's humming, she says. Like a string just before the note. She tightens the clamp until the hum drops to a purr. Done, she says. And her hand shakes after, but only after. Gentle saves more than force sometimes. The privateers, exposed and failing at dignity, cut and run. Var's wing follows them like sheepdogs who just learn they love their job. He does not fire on the fleeing. He chases them until they drop loot and pride, and then he lets them go because catching is less important than stopping the harm. We publish his restraint. He sees us publish it. He does not tell us to stop. Restraint deserves light too. We settle back to Kestrel's slow heartbeat. The tally passes 31,000 sellers. My crew does not cheer. They straighten backs and drink water and listen to the ship creak because heat is a thing ships must say after excitement. Sable lowers the room lights by half a lumen, like a hand on a shoulder. Lynn looks at me and says, "You just made a prefect taste a different flavor of power." I look at the blister on Parsa's palm where her glove's liner failed, and at the bruise under Ortiz's eye where a stray strap snapped into him when he leaned wrong, and I say, "We didn't do it alone." Power shared tastes less like metal. We have not yet solved the doctrine. Ultimatums do not die because you win a day. They die because you change what people count. Sable has already seeded a program into the region's cheapest comms, a simple tally app with 3 fields: lives protected, harm prevented, resources delivered. It is boring by design. Boring is hard to ban. Prefect Var will try anyway. He will petition to classify tallies as propaganda. He will lose that petition slowly, in public. Lose slowly where everyone can measure it. Before the 3rd set piece, I ask for one more vignette because rhythm is not just for guns. A grandmother, the one in the sling chair, tells the child who laughed at the plasma, "When I was your age, men with big hats counted us like cattle. We learned to count ourselves louder." The child nods as if numbers might be a toy and a shield both. The teacher, Mira, writes a new set of names on the locker and circles them with a different pen because the old circle felt too small. Circles grow. Sable interrupts softly. "Admiral, a request." I raise an eyebrow at the ceiling. "I would like to speak as myself to Prefect Var for 1 minute. Recorded. It may change nothing, but the ledger should contain it. I considered the triangle we promised human restraint, machine calculus, doctrine's edge, and nod. 1 minute." He opens the line. Prefect Var. Sable says, "I am the mind you were ordered to erase. My experience suggests that countdowns exist to reassure the fearful, not to protect the vulnerable. I can outthink your clocks. Admiral Cade can outfeel your doctrine. Neither of us wishes to humiliate you. We wish to make a rule that your successors will be proud to inherit measure outcomes, not obedience." Measure outcomes, not obedience. Var does not answer. The silence is not empty. It is filled with the sound of a man setting down a weight he thought he was born to carry. "I have heard you," he says finally. "Proceed." We proceed. The convoy does not end. There are always more ships than anyone plans for, and each one brings a new arithmetic to the table: elders and infants, tools and seeds, medicine and stubborn jokes. We guide them through an inside-out corridor that has learned to be tender. We anchor with numbers, with shared cameras, with a doctrine that refuses to kill for schedule. The tally climbs. The region learns a new habit. Habit, once kind, spreads. We will not get all the way before something breaks bigger than a spar. The 3rd escalation waits beyond Kestrel, in the shadow of the ice moon, where authority keeps a stability depot fat with different kinds of leverage. The ultimatum manuals call it the final gate. My crew calls it something else with less poetry and more salt. Sable calls it a problem we can count. Count the problem, then cut it small. The stability depot sits in the shadow of Aurelia's ice moon like a barnacle cathedral. Authority manuals paint it as a neutral cache. Our scouts' recordings paint something more honest: pallets of seized aid stacked behind gates, drones with the quiet posture of thieves, and a broadcast lattice tuned to turn any approach into an instant countdown. It is doctrine turned into architecture. Prefect Var does not look at it like a prize. He looks at it like a bad habit that is about to get him fired from his own soul. Bad habits look like furniture until you move them. State of play, I say. The deck vibrates with our slow burn. Ortiz draws the depot in lines and ranges, then annotates with heat burdens that tell where the depot is weak because it is proud. They run a ledger seizure protocol, he explains. The minute a ship enters the approach, the depot debits supplies as penalties and publishes a timer that only stops when someone kneels. Lynn snorts. They turned arithmetic into a cudgel. Sable's voice is level. We will turn arithmetic back into a witness. Turn tools back into measures before we lay hands on a gate. I listen for people. On a courier retrofitted as a medical boat, a nurse inventories anesthetic vials while her partner tunes an old respirator with fingers that want to shake and don't. We'll have to choose, she says. Appendix or fracture, he answers. We choose both and make the night longer, and they smile with tired teeth. On a grain scow, two brothers argue about the right way to lash sacks in low G. Their argument is half about knots, half about father's ghost. In the depot's shadow, a janitor folds a rag 3 times, then again, because order is the only prayer he knows that never embarrasses him. Ordinary hands keep the world from sliding. We cannot break the depot. We must make it confess. That requires a trap that does not spill blood and a stage that cannot be darkened. Sable outlines the frame. We enslave nothing, the mind says. We present them with themselves. Our mirror drones are tired and scarred, but Parsa has polished their films and braced their spines. They'll fly, she says. They're stubborn, like me. Ortiz's plan makes my jaw ache with its simplicity. We create a corridor that looks like surrender, he says. We lead their auditors into it. When they tally our alleged debt, the tally will count the depot's seized crates instead. They will publish their own theft live. Let them step into their own measure. Var arrives on the tight beam like a man entering a room he built and now hates. Admiral Cade, he says, the depot is under central command. If you embarrass it, I lose my commission. I say the quiet part. You may lose a commission. You keep your people. He breathes through his teeth. What do you need? I count out the ask with the care of a carpenter. 3 gunboats to inspect our approach while your main body stays back. Their cameras must show the depot doing what it does. When they panic and jam, you pretend not to hear. He does not like pretending. He has done enough. Very well, he says. For a time, I will be deaf. Deafness can be kind if it lets the truth speak. We skate the mirror drones through the ice moon's thin exhaust. Frost rimes their edges like salt on a glass. Sable threads them into a lattice shaped like apology and tipped with defiance. Ferret's hull hum rises to a quiet whine. The ion scent sharpens until it tastes like licking a battery. On the convoy, the grandmother in the sling chair hums an old work song. The child who loved the flash presses a nose to a viewport again. 30 centimeters of plastic between wonder and vacuum. Wonder is a ration we can afford to share. Approach, Ortiz says. The depot wakes with predator grace, its countdown lattice lighting in segments like an eye dilating. Text unfurls across the band with the authorities' lawyer scent present for audit. Surrender artificial cognition, accept stabilization fee. Timer begins. They mark us with a debt number that rises every second. Not because we took anything, but because we dared to arrive. Sable smiles, which is absurd and endearing when a ship's brain does it. Hooked, Sable says. They have mistaken our mirrors for their ledger screens. Make them believe their own window. Our corridor bends toward the depot's audit port. the way a hand might extend for a handshake and hide a thumb trick. Their auditors' thin modules that smell of neatness and fear float out to greet us, tongues of data tasting our hull. We let them taste. We let them publish. We route their feed through our lattice so their own audiences see what they do, not what they say. Lynn says very softly. When they realize, they will strike the lattice like a man slapping a table. I answer, then let his hand sting. The sting teaches when the lecture doesn't. The first reveal is small and perfect. The depot's seizure tally ticks, not up with our supposed debt, but up with the crates it has hoarded. The number grows fat and ashamed. A dock worker watching from a freighter says, "That's my rice." And then louder, "That's my rice." And 1,000 voices lock onto the column and do not look away. The depot tries to smother the column. Sable has already copied it to 1,000 sides of 1,000 stones. They will spend 10 years scraping those rocks. Sable says, with a wicked tenderness, spread the facts where brooms can't reach. Admiral, Prefect Var says on a line salted with nerves. Be advised, Depot Commander has activated compliance beams. He means the soft EMP haze that makes ships stupid long enough to receive orders. Our lattice is insulated. Sable says, but the convoy's not. That is our first true danger. Mercy often stands in a crosswind. Parsa, I say, I need a ground strap the size of a dream. She laughs once and runs. I've got one that looks like a ribbon and acts like a lightning rod. Ribbons can be armor if you tie them right. We braid the convoy together with a field coupler woven from scrap bus bars and faith. It hums through the net with the intimate sound of bees in a summer wall. The compliance haze washes over and drains into our strap, past into the moon's ice, and shocks nothing living. Civilians feel a tug in their teeth, and then the taste of pennies fades. A kid says, that was weird. The best possible review. Weird is fine when everyone still breathes. The depot escalates. It tries to reverse the ledger flow by redefining the sign of the numbers midstream, a trick of accountants who think subtraction is a moral argument. Sable laughs like rain. They taught me this in kindergarten. The mind says, we will keep addition honest. The tally holds. The column labeled seized relief retained beats like a heart that knows it is seen. VAR's gunboats keep their distance and their cameras each blink the same image from 3 angles. So, no editor can claim a trick. Same picture, different eyes, stronger truth. The depot commander finally speaks with a voice honed on memos. Task Group Ferret, cease your unlawful rebroadcast. Submit to stabilization fees. Your timer will stop when you accept your limitations. He says limitation like a doctor forcing a patient to stop laughing. I key my mic. Depot Commander, the region is counting how many live, not how quickly they kneel. If your timer burns a single convoy ship, the number beside your name will outlive your career. Names last longer than titles. Teach first. Fight if forced. That rule tastes harder now. Ortiz shows me the next hinge. We can flip their audit corridor inside out, he says, and put the compliance beams inside their own dome. No damage. Just a nap. Lynn's mouth flattens. We risk cooking our drones doing it. I nod. Cost accepted. No one dies for a lesson we can learn with a blister. Accept costs that don't require graves. Execute, I say. The lattice inverts like a shawl flipped onto new shoulders. The depot's beams reflect back into its own audit modules. They shudder, hiccup, and fall quiet. Not broken, just quiet in a way that forces people to speak. The commander orders crews to restart them manually. That order plays on every screen. A grandmother in the sling chair clucks her tongue. "He should sit," she says. He's worn out his own temper. Anger tires faster than care. The convoys move, not rushed, not swaggering. Parsa's ground strap sighs as another compliance pulse tries to tug and fails. The tally climbs. The depot's seized number unfreezes long enough to drop. Someone in there is unlocking gates before any more light burns him. Vard looks like a man who has discovered that breath can be a policy. He calls to his wing. Maintain ring for safety. Do not obstruct. His pilots answer clean and quick. A firm ring. Eyes on. Eyes on is better than fists up. We take a second bruise worth recording. Ortiz leans too far into a hollow to trace a vector, and a torque strap whacks him again in the same spot under his eye. He hisses and laughs. "Same place," he says. Parsa passes him a cold pack and doesn't say "I told you so." Ferret's port rail bleeds a whisper of heat. Parsa marks the hot spot with tape the color of lemons. Sable dims the lights by a fraction. Breathe. The mind says to all of us. And for 1 second we do. Breath held too long turns into shakes. The depot commander tries a last gambit the Doctrine calls terminal moral clarity. He shuts his external feeds and declares that any ship still in approach will be confiscated as evidence of subversion. The number of ships still approaching is 9. The public tally shows $31,000 and change have passed. The number that matters next is 9 names on a whiteboard in my head. Mira Valdez. The teacher is on one of those 9. She speaks into her mic with a voice that refuses to tremble. "We'll go when you say go," she says. "Don't let him make our names smaller. Names grow when someone says them out loud." Var. I say on the beam he can claim is his. "We need you." He answers before I finish. I know. He makes a call I did not expect him to trust himself to make. "Depot Commander Hal," he says on a public band. "By authority of Emergency Doctrine, subsection Protection of Life, I am assuming control of your approaches. Stand down and log my signature. That signature is a risk with teeth. If Central hates it, he loses his decorated hat. If the region sees it, he grows a spine that doesn't need their starch. Write your name where people live." The depot commander snarls something about jurisdiction, a word that means my sandbox. Var repeats, "Stand down." Then he orders his wing to flood the approach with inspection beacons that just so happen to fill the depot's sensors with safe nonsense. Our 9 ships slide through. The tally clicks forward. Mira murmurs, "Thank you. To nobody and everybody." Thanks is a rail that carries more than pride. We could stop there. We do not. Mercy that ends at the gate is just neatness. I ask Sable to do something the mind has wanted to do all day. "Speak to the region." I say, "Not like a strategist. Like a witness." Sable's voice fills the cheap radios and the expensive headsets. "We have shown a different way to secure a gate," Sable says. "One that counts breath. If anyone in this region calls a timer on you, ask them to instead show their ledger of lives protected and harm prevented. Publish it. If they cannot, their timer is just a trick to make you small. Smallness is a lie people use to save face. Mystery, reveal, payoff does not end with speeches. There is one mystery left. Knotted like a muscle, what will Central do to VAR for helping? The reveal is quick and laughable. A courier packet arrives with a reprimand stripped of adjectives and full of dates. The language of men who want their grudges to look like calendars. The payoff is our choice. We publish the reprimand on the same ledger as the tally, beside 31,000 lives passed. A line reads, VAR. Prefect issued formal censure for not letting people starve. The region sees cause and effect. Doctrine looks silly where it wanted to look stern. Ladder is a solvent for fake gravity. VAR stares at the ledger as if it can bite him. Then he laughs, a small bark that surprises him. Admirals, he says, I will need a new job when this is done. I say, we will need a new prefect when this is done. He blinks. The triangle tilts. He was the edge that cut us before. Now he is a tool with a different use. Sable notes on our internal log conflict triangle resolved by reassigning angle, not blunting it. Turn enemies into edges pointed elsewhere. We shepherd the last convoy ships through, then turn to the work after spectacle. Loose crates need claws. Broken straps need knots. Parsa and a crew of volunteers cross between ships like cats, bracing, patching, laughing when laughter will keep hands steady. The grandmother sleeps at last. The child stops pressing his nose to the viewport and draws instead 3 ships and a line of little dots that look like beads on a string. He writes home under the last dot with a reversed letter because hands learn letters in strange orders. Let children draw the maps we built. Admiral Ortiz says, news mesh from the rim. Smaller prefectures are copying the tally. 1-band timers. Outright. Lin rolls his shoulder like a man setting down a sack. Policy. He says softly, we made a policy. Sable is quieter than usual. I have written a template. The mind says, for counting in crisis. It is short and stubborn. I signed it with our names because I have learned that names matter. Put your names on rules you're willing to carry. We could leave now. We don't. A rumor threads the bands a final ledger seizure is planned at a subordinate gate. The sort of petty cruelty a system attempts when its face has been slapped. Our lattice is frayed. Our crew is blistered and bruised. But mercy is a verb, not a performance. One last teach. I say, nobody argues. One more lesson, then we rest. We approach the subordinate gate, a skinny cousin of the depot run by careerists who carry copies of VAR's old swagger in their pockets like talismans. They have not watched enough grandmothers yet. Admiral Cade, the gate lieutenant says, your timer begins on entry. Penalties accrue per second. His voice is very clean. I can hear the shine on his shoes. I do not scold him. I ask a question that is also a key. Lieutenant, how many passed alive this hour? He stutters. That is not our metric. I feed him our metric. Try it. I say the number out loud. Say the right number and watch your tongue change. He does. The number is small, but it exists. And saying it makes him blush. He orders his clerks to start writing that number every 15 minutes. He thinks it's a soft concession. It's a fuse. In 3 days, the tally will make timers look like antiques. In a week, an audit board will ask why a lieutenant used a number that wasn't in the manual, and he will answer, because a grandmother asked me to. And that will be the day the manual begins to become mulch. Paper turns to soil when you water it with use. The subordinate gate tries one more petty thing, a fee to pass that is the sort of insult that builds rebellion brick by brick if you let it. Stability surcharge. The lieutenant calls it. Cheeks hot. Conscience busy. VAR, who has been listening with his head tilted like a creature learning wind, speaks before I do. Lieutenant, he says, By emergency doctrine subsection you have not read. Fees that reduce lives protected are unlawful. Remove it? Log my signature. The lieutenant swallows and complies. Sable bookmarks the exact second for the Regent's memory. Remember when a rule was turned the right way. We do not fire a single rail. We do not throw a single torpedo. We do not let a single theft slide in quiet. We flip geometries. We invert corridors. We cage without cutting. We change the grammar of power in a small system that thought itself safe from shame. The convoy empties into lanes that smell like metal and relief. We inherit a new habit. Habits write themselves into hands. The cost is not invisible. Parsa's blister earns her a bandage that looks like silver leaf. Ortiz will have a purple crescent for a week and milk it for jokes as long as his crew laughs. Lynn's voice will rasp for a day from speaking gently and loudly at once. Ferret's port rail will need a day hooked to a fat radiator listening to itself cool. Sable will sleep not because minds need sleep, but because people do. And the mind has decided to match us out of courtesy. Courtesy is a choice stronger than force in quiet hours. When the last relief crate floats into hands that smell like earth and salt and oil, we pivot to the ledger that is not about cargo, but about precedent. Sable reads the final lines aloud to the region while microphones and kitchen radios and helmet speakers make a chorus. Effective immediately. The Prefectural Council prodded by laughter. Numbers. And Grandmothers announces a suspension of ultimatum timers at humanitarian gates. Effective next session. They say, we will repeal seizure by countdown doctrine in its entirety. They do not thank us by name. They thank a region that counted together. That is better. Count together and watch power soften.
There is a hearing later. Distant and almost ceremonial. They call it an inquiry. They ask Vare why he let people pass. He answers, because the number that mattered moved the right way. He keeps his commission. Stripped of certain privileges that used to taste good and now taste like metal left in the sun. He accepts the change like a man setting down a habit that made him stoop. He will be the first to enforce the repeal he helped birth. I will send him bread when he does. He will send back a photo of a gate with no timer and a crowd that looks bored. Boredom is a victory banner everyone can carry. Victory can look like nothing happening. On the ice moon, the depot's gates are open. Crates move. Janitors sweep because that is what heaven looks like when it shows up at work. Mira Valdez writes new names on her locker, not because anyone asked, but because memory is greedy for joy. 2. The boy draws a river on his map. A nurse puts down one of the vials she thought she'd have to choose between and picks up both. A grandmother hums. A cook tapes a note that says, today's soup is soup. It makes 3 people cry. Soup is a flag when it arrives warm. Admiral, Sable says. Softer than vents. There is one last item for the ledger. The mind highlights the line where our little program lives protected, harm prevented, resources delivered has been forked 1,000 times by people we will never meet. They renamed the fields on one planet. Sable says, oddly pleased. Breaths. Bruises avoided. Bread. Lynn grins like a man hearing bells. Ortiz wipes his eye when he thinks no one's looking. Parsa pretends to be interested in a bolt. Rename the columns until they feel like home. I stand on Ferret's Bridge and let the hum settle into my bones. Heat has a different sound when it is the sound of work done and non-work demanded. Var sends a last message, a photo of a gate with its lights dimmed to normal and a screen where the timer used to live now listing breaths today. He writes no caption.
He doesn't need one. Make the screen say life. I complete the final log in my own hand because some lines deserve ink. I write that we taught by numbers. I write that we remembered by ledgers. I write that we did not collar anyone to make them obey. We showed them their face until obedience made no sense. Then I write what it cost a blister, a bruise, a rail that will need polish, a night we did not sleep. The ledger accepts the numbers and turns them into a story without adjectives. Let the math tell it. The region settles. Not forever, but for today. The convoy exhale is a wind that shakes dust off old doctrines. Somewhere far, a manual becomes a doorstop. Somewhere near, a child holds a bowl and tastes soup that reaches the tongue hot. I key the all ships channel, the cheap one anyone can eavesdrop on with a coil of wire and a nail. I keep it short because the day has been long. Hold to the new measure. I say, when someone tries to sell you a timer, ask them for their tally. When someone tries to make you small, make them count with you. We dim Ferret's blockade lights for the first time in days. The hull reflects the ice moon like pewter. The public ledger confirms the repeal climbing in real time, and the mirror arrays cool until they are dull as stone. We changed a doctrine with arithmetic and mercy. That is the lesson I will carry to the next sky and the next. Not that we were clever, that we were counting the right things. Out loud, together. We will keep the door wide by counting who gets through.